Guys, today's video is just an extension of what I have briefed in my previous video, and I felt obligated to continue with some of the series of these videos simply because the euphoria over this farmers' protest hasn't stopped yet, and all the efforts of 11 rounds of talks have ended in dismal failure. In fact, we were all upbeat. Personally, I was also up to the best of the optimism that today's meeting might result in consequential decisions, and even the farmer side must have thought through the offer. The offer of the government that includes deferring the bills or postponing the bills at least for 18 months. It's a pretty long period, and I was gesticulating as if this was a chance the farmers' unions would have grabbed just to get their protest registered for, because God knows what is the government up to, and if they really backtrack and they start behaving restlessly and they somehow try to intimidate and crush the entire movement in the name of the non-cooperation and the unruly farmers' behavior during and after, and the challenging move of conducting a parade parallel to the 26th January Republic Day parade, which is really ceremonial, and no government can allow anything that might intervene with the smooth functioning of that biggest festival of India. But on the other hand, the farmers' unions, they met today in the 11th round of talks, and 11th round of talks ended in just above 11 or 15 minutes, with the agriculture minister assuring them that this is the best they can offer for now, and it's up to in the court of the farmers' unions to decide whether they would give the government a chance, a breathing space to think through the modalities of how to bring about modifications, the desirable, undesirable, or those modifications that have been the bone of the contentions. And the crux of the meeting is to diffuse this tension, the conflict that has raised over around 6 months. But the stalemate doesn't seem to be dying at all, with both the parties in a confrontation course, and this appear to be colliding in the wrong direction. Indian government assurance that it's not feasible or workable, or it's not actionable on their part to roll back the entire three laws which are touted by them repeatedly. They have been reiterating their stand that these are for the common welfare of the farmers all over India, and even they have assured that there would be promising gesture on the MSP, although they haven't given anything in writing, contrary to their oral assurance that they're definitely going to, as they have done before, and they have already raised from around 800 to 1800 of the paddy or wheat price. So the scenario is still ambiguous, and it doesn't seem to be any thing happening in the right direction, because today's failure leaves the ball in the court of both the government and the farmers. On the one hand, people may be looking askance that what could be the future course of action for the farmers, because they have been offered something that is the first step towards taking the giant stride into bringing their genuine demands on the table, at least on the negotiation table. And probably that's the only way before they really convene a session. That's highly unlikely. In the winter session, they're going to present the budget. And you know that in pandemic, the government has hardly conducted any parliamentary sessions, and the opposition aren't going to get any chance of raising their voices or registering the protest in the form of the legislative prerogatives, bringing the floor of the House and drawing the attentions of the rest of the right-minded coalition parties and state governments, which have been on the forefront of backing this struggle, protests, and they have been reasonably raising the concerns in their own ways on different platforms, to social media, and especially Congress has been trying to make some inroads into this political mileage, although the Farmers Association have kept all these political parties at bay, and they have been continue with their stance or stand that there is no scope, or they don't leave any room, they don't allow any of the political parties to either intervene, interfere, hijack the entire movement. And it's primarily the farmers who remain the key players in all the decision-making process, and also what works better for them, and whether after more than 100 lives being spent, they have a valid point that they can't go empty-handed, and if at all they're going back home, they will be going with some sort of fruition of their demands and concrete assurance through legislative laws to be passed in the parliament by convening sessions, calling all the parties involved, and giving it a statute with a hammer out or broker with the involvement of whether it's the judiciary or executive or legislatures. Now, the imbroglio that is really brewing up, and I fear this might lead to a catastrophic end, because the government is tight-lipped, is in a very uptight quagmire, and it can ill afford to remain oblivion or to remain indifferent, and they will have to take very strong stand as far as stopping this tractor rally that has been called for to go along with the tank being paraded on our 26th of January Republic Day. The plausible explanation of the farmers' communion is that They aren't asking for something that's they don't deserve, and it's their fundamental right for every citizen of India to hoist the flag and to be a part of the celebration. And there's nothing wrong in their rally being conducted. We have been preparing for this rally for so long, and thousands of tractors are marching, and their preparedness shows that probably they knew that the government isn't going to bring any solace or concrete proposals before them, as has been the precedence in the last 10 rounds. And this round appears to be like, a complete disaster, because in fact there was no negotiation, and the contenders didn't even saw eye to eye, and there's no upcoming meetings scheduled for now, probably because the government has left it in a lurch for a while, and they would like to avoid this kind of stalemate, just in order to bail it out of the crisis on 26th January, at least for now. So primarily it's a lot of situation. Even the central government, apex body, after constituting that committee of 4 members, which actually comprised the most of the members who had, they were inclined towards giving judgment, although they're not empowered to give any judgment, so to say. But given their credentials and their past precedents, they are pro-government or pro-law lobbyists, and the farmers, they have a reason to believe that nothing concrete will emerge, even if this committee recommends. And what happens if this committee recommends for repealing the laws, or comes with a kind of just insensible explanation that these laws have been carefully and have been deliberated upon, and this could have far-reaching good consequences to the farmers' fate, and further deliberations would be needed to bring about modifications, and those modifications aren't acceptable in any terms to the farmers, because they know that these farm associations are pretty aware that once this kind of mammoth gathering with a massive support for pressing on to the demands and such a big scale raising hue and cry, not only nationally at the national platform but also internationally, and getting the sympathy of the public and the farmers at large, even those have been partisans to BJPs and have been allies and sometimes Akali Dal. So if they kowtow or they simply capitulate and they get into the fishy deal, or they get tempted to accept these concessions to the extent that government has taken the right stand of giving them 18 months of grace period, that appears to be to me it's a longer buying time to deflecting or to derailing the entire agitation and demonstration, because after institution of certain committees and after 1.5 years of waiting, the government might be strengthening its position, might be allaying the fears of the masses, and might be campaigning to foster amity and positivity and good vibes among the farmers, and they might even try to, as it hasn't abstained from so far, in splitting and dividing these farmers lobbyists into subcategories and trying to negotiate with the breakaway groups, because out of the 40 party members of the farming community who have so far represented, the under the ones, and because when they decided not to accept or reject the government's offer of this grace period of 18 months, or even government maybe persuaded or maybe willing to give some more time. It could be extended to 2 years at a stretch. But it's not about extending the grace period of how to implement, how to go into the provisional nitty-gritties of how to institute the laws, and probably government might even see whether it's going to work out later after 2 years of when this euphoria is over, when this pandemic crisis, when this agitating farmers, and when this unison and strengthened signals they're deflected, and the government is in a better position to negotiate or bargain or try to blackmail or try to charge sheet against those who have indulged in this so to say international activities as the government is initiated with. Because probably you should be aware that the NIAs have, National Intelligence Agency, they have already issued so many notices and warnings, and they have been rounding people, they have been confiscating things, there have been intimidation, and even the members, the family members of those leaders, or those who are fighting from the fronts, they have been taken into counseling, they have been taken into confidence, and they have been asked to negotiate with probably, and the government started with this kind of ploy at the beginning itself, although it didn't work, because surprisingly, or to my utter satisfaction, that these protesting allies, they haven't shown any signs of cracking so far, and they have been showing really the kind of resilience that's needed for these laws to be completely repealed, revoked, and rolled back and complete. There's no harm in that, as long as it's not in the interest of the 70% of the agrarian masses in India. And probably there can be better deliberations on this with the consultation of other party members, other stakeholders like opposition, and there are so many other parties. They should have been. There are experts who are being like policymakers, and there are agencies that specialize in looking at the efficacies and implementation and the kind of justification of certain laws. And there are so many steps of screening and subjecting these laws before and giving to the benches or to benches, and like there are action committees, discussion committees, dispute settlement committees, and then before it really goes under the hammer of the presidential assent, or before it's really promulgated according to the constitutional directives. So the government might be in a better bargaining position if this government really accede to or consent about the time frame. But the bottom line remains that these farmers will be going empty-handed with the fake promise that government is so experienced in offering. The government keeps on saying something and really mean that. On several occasions, the government has backtracked, hasn't lived up to its promises or commitments, and it has wantonly derided and ranted and brought opposition to the heel, and they haven't fulfilled all those kind of wild promises that they have started with the manifesto, except the two major achievements, so to say, although they're not achievements. There's a blot in the name of the constitutional history of like the making of the temple, construction of the temple, that too with the involvement of Supreme Court judgment. And then they went on repealing 370, although since it was of national interest and the parties involved, they couldn't have said no to it, or couldn't have, went against it, because if you talk anything against Modi's move, you're immediately branded as anti-national or someone who really who's really, working towards the destruction or bringing, bad name to the nation, or they may be belong to those fringe elements, those who indulge in all kinds of mudslinging, bringing a bad name to the institutions and all. Although it has been rampant in Modi's destination that most of the government agencies have been working in nexus with one another, and they have not been following the footsteps of the standard practices that are, expected. Maybe it's the CBI or NIA or even our judiciary is not doesn't remain untainted these days, because judiciary has extended its role, and where it shouldn't be at all poking its nose, it has started poking, like constituting a committee where that's not the domain of judiciary to remain an arbitrary and be a party to any ongoing disputes in the national interest. So the apex body's primary job is to oversee and supervise that the government is functioning in accordance with the laws which are prescribed in our constitution, and it's the job of the apex body not only to supervise but also to direct if the laws are made contrary to what is prescriptive and what is anti-constitutional. So the present scenario doesn't give us much hope, except that this collision course continues, and the divide between the government and the other party is deepening day by day, and all of the talks are leading to an abysmal failure, and it's also triggering off all sorts of collateral damages, financial, social, political, and our identity as a robust democracy, which is supposed to be one of the leaders in setting up good trends. And so the world is watching, and the world is watching with an avid eye, and it's also reacting. The world media is also watching what's happening, and the farmers have somehow been able to reserve some kind of warmth in the hearts of the international media, international platforms. And if I have to mention someone, of course, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has openly and has already solicited cooperation and has already sought good gestures from the government. Then we have some of the European Unions and UK legislative bodies, and those kind of have been showing signs of sympathy towards this far aggrieved and stressed farmers who have been spending days and night in this really deplorable state. And it's heartening, and it's deeply moving to see that they have been braving the bad weather, this chilly winter in the small shanty makeshift tents, and I think it's the 58th days already passed. And if even after 11 rounds of negotiations and nearly 2 months of struggle, if the government couldn't be convinced, and it hasn't been, even given second thought to its recalcitrance and its audacity or the kind of rigidness. God knows what's in the offing, and probably government might resort to those kind of gimmicks and tactics or ruthlessness, because that would be the only viable option left with the government. If the government is adamant and it says there is no going back or on three laws, and there's no way they're going to repeal, and they aren't in any mood or any situation or to roll back those draconian laws, then what is the option left? The farmers are left in a lurch. They'll continue hoping to hear something positive and pleasant from them, but this ruthlessness, the kind of apathetic attitude from the negotiators, maybe sometimes the railway minister, Goyal, sometimes it's the agriculture minister, sometimes it's altogether different body of the committee. The government is trying to allay the fears, allay the crisis one way or the other. It's juggling its course. It's trying to deflect it in one way or the other. Sometimes employing the Supreme Court intervention, sometimes seeking the support of some of the committees, which are apparently on the side of the government. And then sometimes buying time as a breather for the time now. And it's not generally driven by and primarily concerned with the kind of distressed farmers, and that's not in thousands, or there are lakhs of farmers on the street. They've stopped their earning bread through the agriculture activities. Now they're on the street with the tractor, the family, and with all kinds of productivity brought to a halt. And in fact, the whole of the nation is in standstill, and we're watching with a bated breath what is the outcome. In fact, today I was really hopeful of getting to know of something positive from both the sides, but it's too damning and pessimistic. So to hear that the government doesn't budge an inch and doesn't move, doesn't change its stance for even a while, and what's the point of offering the same thing again and again? I mean, it's like, you are simply trying to fool or take the entire agrarian community, the masses, for a ride, and think that they can be fooled consistently and for so long, and there won't be any repercussions of it. It's a democratic government, and they form the large majority of the voters, and they are the ones who voted to power. So don't you think that they are the ones that can vote you out of power one day? The government can ill afford and should really think over it, as it shouldn't really explode into a national tragedy, and the government, instead of focusing on Bengal election and not even listening to the people next door, I mean in Delhi, and the farmers associations, they have given a clear-cut, categorical signal that they aren't budging at all, because they're prepared for the tractor rally, and it's their prestige now. And if they stop this, they would be rallying the forces that they have been doing it for months together with all the sacrifices made by those people who died struggling, and those died protesting in those demonstrations in this. So it would be like paying a homage to those departed souls, that at least they have been able to fulfill their promise of hoisting the flag and marching on the day of the Republic celebration, because they equally enjoy the rights of doing so. The government's law and order situation doesn't hold much water, and I don't think it's really a plausible explanation of keeping them completely outside Delhi. Now, and the ring road, if what are they going to do? For the last 2 months, they have been largely peaceful. There haven't been any kind of untoward incidents, and the government didn't have to resort to any kind of extreme measures like lathi charge or baton. And I'm really grateful to, and I'm really amazed at the kind of sagacity that these farmer union leaders and they have shown so far, and they have been really very diplomatic, quite genuine, and they have kept all the other opposition, people of the vested interest or other agencies at bay, and out of this completely government and farmers struggle or tussle. And I hope that there's no harm, there won't be any untoward incident if they indulge in that tractor rally, or they're allowed to hoist the flags at least to their heart's content, and they would be satisfied that they're also being treated as the genuine nationals of India. And these farmers are our breadwinners. They are the ones, and their children, their young ones, they're fighting for the nation, the borders, and they are providing food, and they're providing a subsistence, and they're not the ones who indulge in anti-national activities, and they have really proven this point so far. Had that been the scenario, just imagine that thousands and thousands of people within unison making contingent of tractors with no unruly incidents so far, and they have even gained the sympathy of the mainstream media, which has kept away from this entire crisis, simply because they have their vested interest in somewhere else, or either they are a party to a vested party with their own interest in India. Today I was stunned to see that when the outcome of this meeting, 11th round, was announced, there wasn't any media out there, there wasn't any declaration. In fact, when I was watching the news, what I found is that our Prime Minister was arranging for his maiden visit, in the election scenario, to garland the hero of Bengal, and trying to appropriate this hero, one of the four heroes of Bengal, the one who founded NIA, National Indian Army, and who fought Subhash Chandra Bose. He's one of the greatest figures, and only next to Gandhi. And those who are interested in knowing about history and his contribution of founding a party at that time, and uniting the people against the Britishers, and even forming a well-disciplined contingent, an army, National Indian Army, and fought for the nation and made sure that we got our independence, whether it's through by resistance, armed resistance, or peacefully through civil disobedience and non-violent means. So the central government is more interested and genuinely concerned with how to topple the Mamata Didi's regime, and they would like to make much inroads, try to deploy the contingents through those newly BJP cadres, and they have already been doing better than before in the Panchayati election, and they have been making good progress with the people of anti-Mamata populace, and it has been harping upon that. And in fact, in Bengal, the Mamata Banerjee, she is losing ground on certain fields, I mean, certain instances where it seems like the center wouldn't shy away from imposing the president rule, because the governor also seems to be showing a lot of inclination towards uh, being a savory or a party of the ruling class. And on many occasions, the governor of Bengal has resorted to such kind of gimmicks, and that really doesn't behove to the governor, because governor is a constitutional head. He is not a parliamentarian or chosen or elected to take policy decisions or intervene in the governance of the state. As long as chief minister is there with constitutional cabinet functioning for the welfare of the state. So it's all about the war is afoot about appropriating Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and you can see Mamta on one hand trying to appropriate Netaji with big holders, placards all over Bengal, and then our Prime Minister visit to Bengal is going to create another kind of conundrum in this already fragile political state, which is ruled by leftist CPF for at least a couple of years, and probably that remains one of the last bastions of this leftist government. Although I'm not in all applause, or I'm not showering accolades on this government, because it hasn't been living up to its expectation, and the way it has been functioning with its resistance to all kinds of reformations and policies, and saying no to a heavy industrialization, as Nano, the smallest car by Tata, and this Nandigram land acquisition. So this government couldn't make it conducive for the investors, or local investors, or just international investors or outsiders. I'm not going to step in, because that's not the state to work in peace, and it's a kind of one-party diktat and despotic kind of ruling with one-party rule, which always resists all kinds of changes or revolutions or kind of technological advancement that's the rest of the nation has been beneficiary of. So I'm really not happy the way Bengal has turned out to be now, and but BJP's assurance of ameliorating the masses and raising the income level of the commoners and peasants, and then it has already started the kind of horse trading, or kind of jumping the ship in the turbulent time, because one of the MLA of Mamta Didi's cabinet already is likely to switch side, and Nadda, BJP is already visited, and that's the way this functioning work when the entire nation is reeling under crisis after crisis, day by day, and we are facing the COVID pandemic and the economic crisis, the worst ever, with in the GDP and NNP going down day by day. This government is more up to how to topple state governments, and how to win elections or elections. Some of the states, they have been made unstable because of their intervention clandestinely and the horse trading and bargaining, a kind of destabilizing the constitutional setup. That so this party is notorious, has gained notoriety over the years about not only intervening and also derailing the entire constitutional processing. So farmers, unions, the ball is in their court now, apparently, although the ball remains in the court of the government, because the government will decide whether they're going to accept the whole and sole demands of the farmers, that primarily include repealing the laws, the two laws, the new revised one, and then the other 3 points which have been the bone of contention, like that include electricity bills, tractors, and MSP guarantee. I mean, constitutional guarantee of the MSP, minimum support price. And the other one is just a flimsy ground of that farmers burning the crops and all. That was really ridiculous. That slapping a fine of crore and for those indulging in burning